Second quarterback that we have to talk about, Greeny, is no question Bo Nix. This offensive rookie of the year for Jaden Daniels, it was the runaway early on. It's now two guys, okay? Jaden's had a tremendous season. Bo Nix is playing just as well, and he's got to be in that conversation for offensive rookie of the year. What Sean Payton has done with him is taking some of the old traditional concepts and then really merge them with some of the new age offense that we see in the NFL. And Bo Nix now has not only the Broncos in playoff contention, but his name right there at the top near offensive rookie of the year. Caleb Williams.
Okay. Yeah, I obviously completely agree. I mean, this is shaping up to being such an awesome race between the two of them. They both have had such really great seasons. The biggest difference is that they're just doing it at different times. Bo Nix got off to a little bit slower of a start, and now he's getting better week to week to week to week. And Jaden Daniels got off to a really hot start, and now he's kind of run into a little bit of a losing streak and just not been playing as great. He hasn't been playing bad, but just not as great. Whether it's injury related, honestly, it doesn't matter at this point for the sake of this conversation. Now, I think Jaden Daniels will have the opportunity to be able to feast on the Dallas Cowboys and probably really put up some potentially spectacular numbers, especially if he is indeed fully healthy and health is not an issue. And I wonder how many other games that Bo Nix will have to be able to feast on some of these more bottom barrel of the teams. If we take a look at who they got left, we can see the Raiders will be an interesting game to see how much he can feast. The Browns, the Colts. The Colts are obviously looking a little lively with Anthony Richardson. The Chargers, that's going to be a tough game, obviously. The Bengals, I mean, who knows? I mean, December 29th with the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, is Joe Burrow even playing anymore? Who even knows? And then the Kansas City Chiefs game. That's going to be such an interesting game because I was really relying on that game to be a big game for the Broncos and especially for Bo Nix to be able to win that game and prove, hey, here I am. And if you beat the Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, that's going to certainly skyrocket you in terms of your standing in the NFL, especially if you play well. And again, I've already said that even in that loss against the Kansas City Chiefs, Bo Nix already let everyone know that he is a for real franchise NFL quarterback. Let's go. But it's just going to be interesting because maybe the Chiefs actually have the number one seed locked up. And maybe that is a game that everyone's just sitting. And so the Broncos, maybe it's an important game for the Broncos, or maybe it's not. Maybe their seeding is already locked up as well. Who's to really know? Maybe the Chiefs really need that game, actually. Right? Maybe it actually is coming down. They need to win that game and they win the division. And if not, the Chargers win the division. That is absolutely a possibility. Or maybe it is fighting for the number one seed. Like, we just have no idea what that game is going to be. So if the game is something for the Chiefs, like an actual important game for the Chiefs, and the Broncos win that game, forget about it, man. I don't even care what the numbers or who has the most total touchdowns. Like, that'll be box office. That'll be massive. Unless Bo Nix absolutely plays terrible, and yet the Denver Broncos still somehow to win. I mean, it's hard to say that Bo Nix then wouldn't be considered offensive rookie of the year. And just be a massive, massive moment for him to be able to hurt the Chiefs, right? Like, stop them from winning the division, stop them from having the number one seed. Like, that goes really far in sports when we talk about accomplishments. It's not always about your own individual team accomplishments. Sometimes it's being the stunner and stopping another team, especially a team who is a division rival, the Kansas City Chiefs, back-to-back Super Bowl champions, Patrick Mahomes. Like, that's just a massive, massive, massive statement. Think about how big of a statement it was just to lose to the Chiefs, but still play great and be relied on. So that's why I think that kind of goes a really a long way. So, I mean, listen, the Raiders should be a win. The Browns should be a win. The Colts should be a win. The Bengals should be a win because, again, I just can't imagine that the Bengals are really going to be all together at that point. But even just defensively, what they got going, Bo Nix should feast. And I held back the Chargers and the Broncos just because obviously the Chargers and the Chiefs game, because obviously those are going to be tightly contested divisional games. The Chargers are going to be competing for either the division or wild card. The Broncos are going to be obviously competing for the wild card, maybe division. I think the Chiefs would have to really collapse, just like what the Eagles did last year. Probably unlikely, but still technically a possibility. But it seems to me that the wild card is obviously the more realistic path forward for the Broncos. So we got some juicy games. Like you got a couple of these easy games out of the way, and then it's going to be like brutal game Chargers, question mark game for the Bengals, brutal game for the Chiefs. Although again, it might not be a brutal game. It might just be like, doesn't matter. Carson Wentz is the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. Like that's a legitimate possibility. So it's going to be really, really, really interesting to see how this all unfolds for Bo Nix and the Broncos as a whole. But it's really cool to see this race come down to Daniels and Nix. Nix was always going to be a great bet for Offensive Rookie of the Year, considering the type of quarterback that he is, being able to be with Sean Payton, obviously an absolute seasoned veteran, top offensive mind in the NFL. Anyone who ever doubted that this was going to work was always greatly confused. But Jaden Daniels is definitely ahead, and he feasted so early on in the season in terms of stats, that he was able to really use that. Like if we kind of take a look at this here, we can see that if we just do offensive rating, we can see that Bo Nix is 13. I have it cut down so it's 80% of all the dropbacks, and so we can see that Jaden Daniels is top 3 in terms of offensive rating from PFF. But with that said, if we now do kind of custom, and let's say we go from, let's just take it from, week 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, we're going to have a very different story here to tell. We have Bo Nix now skyrocket up to Jaden Daniels is still there in that one. Let me take out, what is it? If I take out week 6, if we do 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right? If we do that, then what we have here is going to be, they're still very much tied, connected at the hip, 80, 79. So that's why it is truly neck and neck. But we can see that if we look at here, if we just look at it, right, 9 touchdowns to 1 interception, 4 touchdowns to 1 interception, 71% completion percentage to 60% completion percentage, 1,100 yards, 1,200 yards to 934. So it's just one of those things where it just gets interesting, quite frankly. Like it is a lot closer than I think people want to give credit to. The rating, Jaden Daniels 89.8, Bo Nix 108.8. So it all depends on what metric you want to use it for, right? Like what metrics do we want to use? And I know there's also some buys in there and stuff that makes this not perfect comparisons, but sometimes this is just the best that you got. And like I said, if we just take it away and now just do the entire season, we can see that Jaden Daniels is still technically going to be ahead here, but it definitely, where are we here? Where can we find Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels? You still got Bo Nix down at 71 for a rating, and Jaden Daniels is, where is Jaden Daniels? He's at 85. So, and again, it's not like PFF is the end all be all. It's just Bo Nix definitely got off to kind of a slow start, definitely had some rocky statistical games that then really continued to weigh him down, even though he's obviously playing way better. And that's why stats always have to be taken with a massive, massive grain of salt. And even in rankings like PFF, right? They're obviously more of a advanced analytics, but they're not taking necessarily in consideration of like, well, hey, look what Bo Nix did against the Kansas City Chiefs, against the Atlanta Falcons. Like, at the end of the day, even though these analytics are advanced and more in depth than just say the pure box score numbers, it's not always, PFF's not taking into consideration, at least not to my knowledge, like who you're playing. Is this a divisional game? right? Did this quarterback lead a game-winning drive, right? Like, there's just so many of these other factors at play. Did one quarterback or one player like absolutely dominate in one game that now their stats are through the roof? Because that's why you still have someone like a Derek Carr floating at the top of PFF, and like he's considered via PFF like a top, for a long time. It might have dropped now, but like a top 3, top 4, top 5 quarterback. And it's like, I don't think anyone's saying that Derek Carr's that. And it's just because he played so unbelievable in the beginning of the season against some bad teams that it just obviously overinflated that. So that's why I look at it less from a statistical standpoint, and that's why I looked at the schedule first and talked about the narrative surrounding some of these games. And it just seems like the narrative aspect of all of this is way more in favor of Bo Nix, because playing a team like the Chargers and the Chiefs, again, outside of those games not mattering because of locking up seating, those games will hold huge weight. Whereas I don't think Jaden Daniels has those games, because the Cowboys are nothing, the Giants are nothing, the Eagles already beat them. And at that point, their rematch really might be nothing, because the Eagles might already be locked and loaded at that point. Not to mention, beating the Eagles is just not going to be as impressive as, say, Bo Nix beating the Kansas City Chiefs, of course. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Bo Nix leading the Offensive Rookie of the Year race between himself and Jaden Daniels? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.